Shate, Shabadis, Sha'e Keba, Yinishia, Chenjakin Inishle, Toda Cheatney, Bushish Cheen. My name is Donna, and I'm a blessed believer in Jesus Christ. I am in recovery for alcoholism, drug abuse, anger, anxiety, depression, self-doubt, negative self-talk, comparing myself to others, and abandonment and trust issues. I am a proud member of the Navajo Nation. Excuse me, somebody's trying to call me. Great. Hold on. What happened? Okay. Can you still hear me? Okay, good. Okay, so I'm a proud member of the Navajo Nation, and my clans are Chenjakinnet, Cliff Dwellers, and Totochini Bitterwater. I have been able to achieve and maintain sobriety for 2 years, 10 months, and 4 days, and I am a domestic violence survivor. I feel like a walking miracle. I was born at Kaiser Hospital in Harbor City, California. I am the youngest of 3 girls. When I say the youngest, there is a 14-year gap between me and my middle sister. Due to the age difference, I'm not really close with my sisters. I love them very much, but we don't share too much with each other. Plus, they have families of their own and live in other states. I am 41, not married, no children, and I live with my parents who are in their late 70s. I intend to become a caregiver for my parents whenever that becomes necessary. I am so blessed that my entire family is very supportive of my sobriety. In my early childhood, I lived in Torrance, California. I had a good childhood. I loved to read, color, collect stickers, and I enjoyed school. I was a daddy's girl, and I pretty much got everything I wanted. A Nintendo, a scooter, a bike, Fisher-Price, everything. But I never got the creepy crawlers oven that I always wanted. My sister gave me my first taste of beer in that house in Torrance, and it was there that I witnessed my first memorable traumatic experience that was the result of alcoholism. It was Christmas time, and I was about 8 years old when my mom got into a violent altercation with a neighbor. She was cut on her eyelid with a broken bottle. Thank God she only got stitches and it didn't affect her eyesight. Seeing all that blood, I literally thought she was dead. That's where my fear of death and abandonment began. It was always, hold on. After that, it was always very distressing for me whenever my parents wanted to go out and leave me with a babysitter. I would throw an emotional fit to the point where I would hurt myself in a desperate attempt to make them come home. When I was 12, we moved to Long Beach, and I attended Long Beach Poly High. Throughout junior high and high school, I had chronic migraine headaches. I couldn't see, I would throw up, and I just couldn't function. It was then that a doctor improperly prescribed me with Vicodin, which my parents and myself were unaware is an addictive narcotic. In high school, I felt the peer pressure to have sex, drink, and smoke weed, but I never let it get to me. At the time, I hated alcohol. The disease of alcoholism is a family secret to this day that has negatively affected generations of my family on my paternal and maternal sides. My parents drank, their extended families drank, my sisters, cousins, everyone. I didn't know anyone in my family who didn't drink, and I promised myself I would never be like them, a stereotypical drunk Indian. I was too smart, and I had my future to think about. That is until I turned 18 and I met a boy. He was my first love and my first drunk. He introduced me to weed and tequila, and I introduced him to Vicodin. I was taking up to 10 Vicodin in one dose and chasing it with alcohol. That's where the substance abuse started, and college took the back seat. Before I even turned 21, I started going to clubs and bars and meeting random men. I had an enabler, my cousin, who was recently divorced from her high school sweetheart, let me use her ID. We were both brand new to the club scene, and it soon became evident that we carried that addictive gene. From the beginning, I was out of control. I blacked out every time I drank, but I thought that's what drinking was. Having fun, acting crazy, having sex with strangers, then blacking out and doing it all over again the next day. Now I recognize that drinking for me was insanity. I would do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome, and it only got worse every single time. Drunk driving became a norm for me, and I never considered the consequences. There were countless times when Jesus truly took the wheel. When I got home and had no recollection of how I got there, I had no clue that Jesus was showing me his amazing grace all those times. In 2004, I dropped out of Long Beach City College, where I was studying to be a nurse, and my relationship ended. I was lost and heartbroken. As a means to forget, I started smoking weed constantly. I worked at Borders bookstore at the time, and I smoked before work, during work, and after. One day on my way to work, I was trying to smoke and drive as I usually did every day, and I ended up flying off a 405 freeway embankment. I totaled my car, but I lived to tell the tale. Soon after, I met another boy who introduced me to cocaine. I didn't think my coke use was a problem because it was always offered to me. I never bought it myself. I did it socially. I realize now I use coke to drink more. If I felt tipsy, I would do a couple lines to sober up and party on. I would have pointless conversations with random people and snort coke all night until one of us heard the birds chirping outside and we realized it was morning. One night, I was leaving a local party, drunk and high on coke, with a minor in my car, and I couldn't find my way home. Mind you, this was just down the street and I couldn't find my way home, and I got a DUI. In 2005, since I had no real obligations like kids or school, I decided to move to the Navajo reservation. My family is from the Tsalane Cottonwood chapter, and I moved there. I wanted to prove to my family and to myself that despite growing up in the city, I could endure the rural res life. It was definitely a learning experience having to use an outhouse in the middle of winter. While I was there, my goal was to document the societal hardships my people had to deal with on a daily basis. For example, waste management, high rates in diabetes, alcoholism, and the meth epidemic. Instead, the isolation and unemployment caused me to fall deeper into my alcoholism. The positives from my time on the res was I was able to take a Navajo 101 language class and a rug weaving class at the local community college. And I want to show you the rug that I made. It's one of my prized possessions. So that was good. That was a good thing. I eventually moved back home and continued my alcohol-fueled social life. My promiscuity had led to many meaningless, empty sexual encounters and debauchery. Some of these regretful experiences still haunt me at night. My past relationships were dysfunctional and volatile, and 100% of the time I instigated the violence. I have pulled a knife on my ex-boyfriend, a gun, and have used my car as a weapon. I would destroy my boyfriend's personal property and he would beat the crap out of me. We never called the cops on each other because we avoided the law at all costs. Now I understand when people say that alcoholism is a progressive disease. In 2014, while driving intoxicated, my boyfriend and I got into a heated argument. I wouldn't let him out of the car, so he elbowed me in the face. And jumped out. I was livid. Most people see red, but I saw black that day. I tried to run him over in broad daylight on a busy street. Miraculously, I missed him and crashed into the side of a building, totaling yet another vehicle. I could have killed him, the children on the street walking home from school, or myself. By crying, lying, and playing the victim, I manipulated the situation and avoided arrest. That was the first time I ever truly scared myself. I had an uncontrollable alcoholic psychotic episode. That was a life or death event that seriously made me consider entering rehab. In 2015, I began attending AA and I had my first attempt at sobriety for 100 days. In 2018, my mom had a mild stroke. At the hospital, while the doctors were assessing her, I was in the bathroom doing lines of cocaine to deal with the situation. I kept thinking, what if I have a heart attack in here while she's out there having a stroke? It is a blessing that she is not disabled, but it was terrifying. I seriously thought I caused her stroke due to the worry and anguish that my selfish recklessness afflicted upon her. My mom's health scare initiated a downward spiral for me. I started smoking meth. I became obsessed with watching her sleep because I didn't want her to die. I felt so alone. I had no one to talk to or to lean on. If I confided in my sisters, it would get back to my mom, and I didn't want to contribute to her stress. I needed an outlet, someone trustworthy I could communicate with. By the end of the year, I entered into an outpatient alcohol and chemical dependency program. After getting clean, it became clear I was struggling with mental health issues. I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, manic depression or bipolar 2, and anxiety. Self-isolation feels so hopeless. Eventually, I started having suicidal tendencies when I got drunk, and I hid this from everyone. One night, a good friend of mine found me in my closet with a belt around my neck. By 2019, my mom threatened to kick me out of her house. I was feeling suicidal and I didn't know where to turn. So I drove to my local urgent care. I ended up being admitted to a psychiatric ward and staying there for 2 weeks. Instead of a 5150, they call it a 5250, if you didn't already know. I re-entered the outpatient program, and a counselor gave me a flyer for Celebrate Recovery at Parkcrest Church in Lakewood, California. 2020 was a life-changing year for everyone. I discovered Celebrate Recovery during the pandemic. Ironically, I feel like COVID was a blessing in disguise. The bars were all closed and there were no social gatherings, which made it easier for me to avoid drinking situations. I had all the time in the world to spend with my family, and that brought me closer to my parents. I know the same cannot be said for others. No socializing meant no meetings and no support groups, and the isolation drove many to relapse. On November 22nd, 2020, I relapsed after 9 months of sobriety. During my relapse, I ended up at my boyfriend's place, the same one I tried to run over with my car. Even though I slept for a while, by morning I was still drunk and wanted to continue my binge drinking. My boyfriend was not having that, and while he was trying to get me to leave, I tripped and fell on my back. Later, I found out that fall resulted in a compression fracture in my lower vertebrae. My boyfriend called the cops when I tried to literally walk through the glass windows of his storefront to get back inside. Within less than 24 hours after my first drink, I was in the back of a cop car. I had a spiritual experience that day. God spoke to me when I was sitting handcuffed in that car. He said, "Isn't it obvious you have a problem? Like, I'm giving you this chance to open your eyes and you don't see that you have a problem with alcohol. You cannot drink." That incident, along with witnessing my mom cry in desperation over my addiction, was my rock bottom. Before sobriety and Celebrate Recovery, I had no relationship with Jesus. Words like grace, hope, forgiveness, faith, and joy were not part of my vocabulary or my life. Celebrate Recovery saved my life by providing a safe place for me to share my true self. The good, the bad, the broken, and the ugly. CR changed my outlook on life. It gave me hope and gave me a forever family. I learned that the road to recovery is never meant to be walked alone. The hardest part of recovery for me was admitting that I was out of control and that I had a problem. Getting down on my knees and surrendering and asking for Jesus's help was such a relief. I finally tried Jesus and gave him a chance. I had to stop thinking I was different, trust the recovery process, and stop trying to do it all on my own. I received his message and I listened. I opened my heart and mind to him. Self-forgiveness has been one of the toughest, most rewarding concepts to work on. Now I sleep better at night. No more racing thoughts of shame and embarrassment. I have forgiven myself because he forgives me. I no longer wallow in self-pity or blame others for my hardships. Instead, I try to accept hardship as a pathway to peace. I hope for glory, and I realize I am never alone. He has given me the freedom and love that he can only give. On June 13th, 2021, I got baptized and gave my life over to Christ. I love my Jesus, who represents unconditional love, forgiveness, grace, and acceptance. His grace is enough for me. Last month, I lost 2 friends in 1 week. Both struggled with alcohol and drugs. My childhood friend, Guillermo Jr., as my family knew him, died on July 31st, 2023. He was 38. Sandra died on August 3rd, 2023. She was 42, just shy of her 43rd birthday, which was on August 16th. Their deaths really made me question my own life and death. Why was I able to get sober and they weren't? Why did I live? Surely if I continued to use, I would be dead. Losing my friends made me feel the urgency of completing and sharing my testimony sooner rather than later. If my story could touch one person's life, that would be the greatest accomplishment. I share this in memory of my friends, Junior and Sandra. Sobriety has allowed me to approach my life with a clear mind, and that has allowed for so many positive opportunities. I left my monotonous job of 15 years as a cashier at Vaughn's Safeway, another insane situation in my life, and got a job utilizing my degree as a client services representative at a pathology lab. I could never hold down a job in the medical field if I was still living that party lifestyle. I enjoy being a work in progress because it allows for consistent self-discovery. I found out that I actually can dance when I'm sober, which I was terrified of when I first got sober. I was like, how am I ever going to dance again? I have mended so many relationships, especially within my family. I've made amends to several friends and family and carry less resentment. I've completed 2 step studies and was a co-leader of one of those step studies. I am a sponsor to 2 sponsees. In addition, I have attended my first CR Summit this year and met Derek and Joe and others involved in CR Native Nations. That's what brought me here today. And now I have a purpose to live, and I want to live now. No more suicidal thoughts ever. And to share my story and to try to help others, give freely as he has given to me. The most important message of my testimony is that recovery is possible, sobriety is possible, and joy is possible. And you are never alone. There's no condemnation in Christ. You can come as you are. Jesus died for all our sins, past, present, and future sins. He will never love you any less, and he makes no mistakes. The generational trauma can end with you today. If you choose sobriety and you choose Jesus, you can do it. My favorite inspirational verse is, happy are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Matthew 5:4. Thanks for letting me share.